You're the one people rely on, the one who shows up, the one who fixes, supports, remembers, and holds things together. And yet, somewhere inside, you feel strangely invisible. Not ignored, not unloved, just unseen, like you exist more as a function than a person. And you may not know why this hurts as much as it does, but your brain does. It often starts quietly. You become the dependable one, the calm one, the one who doesn't need much. You notice people coming to you for help, for advice, for emotional support. And at first, it feels good. It gives you a sense of purpose, of belonging. But over time, something subtle changes. Conversations start revolving around what others need. Your feelings become shorter. Your stories get interrupted by emergencies. When someone asks how you are, you say, "I'm fine," without thinking. Not because you're hiding, but because you've forgotten how to enter the space. Slowly, you start to feel like a background character in your own life. Needed, but not known. Valued, but not seen. You become the emotional infrastructure of other people's lives. Strong, stable, reliable, and somehow invisible. This begins to affect how you make decisions. You choose what's practical over what you want, what's helpful over what feels true, what's safe over what feels alive. In relationships, you give more than you receive, not because people demand it, but because your identity has quietly fused with being useful. And when no one needs you, you feel oddly empty. Rest becomes uncomfortable, stillness feels wrong, and silence makes you restless. Because when you're not needed, you're not sure who you are. This isn't weakness, it's a psychological pattern, one that forms slowly and invisibly. Here's the reframe that changes everything. You didn't become invisible because you're unimportant. You became invisible because your nervous system learned that being needed is safer than being seen. This pattern is not a flaw, it's an adaptation. At some point, your brain learned that emotional stability, connection, or safety came from being useful. Maybe you grew up in an environment where emotions were unpredictable, or where responsibility arrived early, or where being low maintenance kept the peace. So your nervous system made a quiet decision. If I'm reliable, I'll belong. If I'm helpful, I'll stay safe. If I'm needed, I won't be abandoned. This is not weakness. This is survival intelligence. But the same strategy that once protected you can later erase you. And that's where the invisibility begins. To understand this, imagine your brain as a prediction machine. Its main job is not happiness, it's safety. It constantly scans your environment, asking, what behavior keeps me connected? What response prevents emotional threat? Over time, it builds predictive maps, mental shortcuts that say, when I act like this, I stay safe. When I act like that, I risk disconnection. Now imagine a child whose emotional environment is unstable. In that environment, being expressive might create tension. Having needs might feel like a burden. Taking up space might feel risky. So the brain learns a powerful equation. Usefulness equals safety. This gets wired into the nervous system. Neuroscientifically, this involves reinforcement loops in the limbic system, especially the amygdala and dopamine pathways. Every time being helpful prevents conflict or earns approval, the brain releases small amounts of dopamine and relief is one of the strongest learning signals we have. Over time, the brain starts to prioritize being needed over being known. This creates a hidden identity. I exist to stabilize others. Now here's the hidden trade-off. When your identity becomes usefulness, your emotional expression decreases. Your brain subtly filters out your own needs before they reach awareness, not consciously, automatically, like noise-canceling headphones for your emotions. So you don't feel suppressed, you feel neutral, calm, functional. invisible. This is why people often describe this pattern as emotional numbness, quiet loneliness, or low-grade emptiness, not pain, absence. And because the brain associates visibility with vulnerability, it avoids it. This is the paradox. You crave being seen, but your nervous system avoids being visible. That internal conflict creates the feeling of being invisible even when surrounded. Not fixing, not forcing, not becoming louder, but gently retraining your nervous system. Here is a simple psychological framework built around safety, awareness, and gradual re-expansion. Step 1. Interrupt the automatic helper reflex. What to do: pause before immediately offering help, solutions, or emotional labor. Why it works in the brain: this interrupts habitual dopamine loops tied to usefulness, allowing prefrontal awareness to re-enter. Real-life example: when someone vents, instead of instantly solving, you say, "Do you want advice or just someone to listen?" This creates a tiny identity shift from fixer to presence. Step 2. Practice micro-visibility. What to do: share one small emotional truth daily without over-explaining. Why it works in the brain: this gradually retrains your amygdala that visibility does not equal danger. Real-life example: I'm actually feeling a little drained today. Not dramatic, not heavy, just honest. Each micro-share rewires threat perception. Step 3. Replace help with presence. What to do: offer emotional presence instead of problem solving. Why it works in the brain: this builds relational connection through oxytocin instead of usefulness-based dopamine. Real-life example: instead of advice, you say, "That sounds heavy. I get why that's exhausting." This shifts how others experience you and how you experience yourself. Step 4. Build identity outside usefulness. What to do: engage weekly in one activity that has zero productivity value. Why it works in the brain: this expands identity representation in the default mode network, reducing dependency on role-based worth. Real-life example: walking with music, sketching, slow journaling, watching clouds. Moments where nothing needs to be earned. Step 5. Notice when you shrink. What to do: track moments when you minimize yourself socially. Why it works in the brain: awareness weakens unconscious protective patterns. Real-life example: when you downplay your feelings, mentally note, "I just disappeared again." No judgment, just noticing. This gentle awareness is how nervous systems heal. Here is the simple model to remember: safety equals usefulness equals invisibility. And the reversal: safety equals presence equals visibility. You don't become visible by trying harder. You become visible by feeling safer being seen. Each small moment of emotional honesty is like light entering a closed room, slowly, gently, without force. The goal isn't to stop being helpful. It's to stop disappearing while helping. Because you are not here only to hold others. You are here to be known. If you've spent years being the one everyone leans on, it can feel strange to step into visibility, almost wrong, almost selfish. But it isn't. It's human. You don't need to become louder. You don't need to become different. You just need to let yourself exist without performing usefulness. And slowly, the invisibility fades. Not because others change, but because your nervous system learns, "I am safe to be seen." And when that happens, you no longer disappear to belong. You simply arrive. And that is where your real presence begins.